places to live in New Hampshire and stuff. My brother lives in northern Vermont, he has snow.
As he's staying, or you have things to kill?
No, you can't kill anything after dark.
You can. Yeah.
What about me? Can I kill anything after dark?
Yeah, you have an excuse, you don't know.
Yeah, fine. Good. How about yourself?
Fantastic.
What
Yeah.
about food?
Thank you.
So you're gonna send me out there after dark for you?
I'll leave that a little bit, so in case you, somebody joins. Good.
Thanks, have a lovely meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
Do you control this?
Yeah. That was I can get started if you guys are ready.
Sure.
Okay. And we are recording. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Dayton Open Space Committee. I have 5:33. If you'd all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the agenda tonight, we just have one agenda item. I need to put in approval of the minutes, but just by way of introducing the agenda, we had been talking about the proposed best practices that Serpent was creating for conservation subdivisions. I get that it's not quite ready to be circulated among other committees. It's still under review at Town Hall. Mike Collins looking at it, and a few other people. And at that point, after they've had their chance to look at it and make any potential edits, it's going to start making its rounds among other committees for review and input. So we'll probably be looking at that sometime beginning after the new year. Should it okay?
Yeah, I think if you want to make that the focus of our January meeting.
January, it might be ready by then. That would be,
Yeah, I think
since we
so.
need the beginning of January, so.
Yeah, so it's not, we don't have a draft bylaw yet.
Okay.
What, I'm meeting with some of the town staff on the 12th next week to discuss so me and the person at Serpent I'm working on with this are gonna recommend what we think could be updated to what language where could be improved to encourage more of that type of development. And so we're gonna kind of talk through that. And then based on the feedback we get on what the town is interested in actually changing, then we'll draft the update.
I see, okay.
So we can discuss that. And I mean, we can discuss it at both points. In the January meeting, we can talk about the ones that are specific to how open space is selected in the type of development, because I'm thinking that's what we'll want to weigh in on. We could talk about that, and then once we have a draft bylaw, we can revisit it and take a look and make sure I've captured everyone.
Can I just ask when you mentioned, we're meeting with the town, Mike and the town staff, what does the staff consist of, or what departments?
So it's, I forget what they call it, but it's the staff weekly,
Oh, the management meeting?
yeah, I forget, they had a call, a name for it, but it's Mike and someone from the health department, conservation agent, building department.
Okay, if it's the regular monthly staff meeting, if that's what they're referring to, because I go to that one.
It's not that, it's a weekly meeting that they do. They called it I forget what they called it.
Okay.
It's a weekly meeting they do.
Yeah.
For reviewing,
Yeah.
I think, enforcement, maybe not enforcement, but something like that.
Sure. Okay.
But it's on December 12th, next Tuesday.
So in lieu of that, since we did not have a chance at our last meeting to discuss and bring sure everybody's up to speed on what is our existing open space and recreation plan, I thought that would be the agenda for tonight, so that's what's on our meeting agenda. I don't know if everybody, I did send out the link prior to our last meeting, I don't know if anybody's looked at it and had questions about, you were talking in particular about really the town needs to have a priority list of parcels, land, reasons why it's a priority, whether it's for, it's, it's a floodplain that we want to encourage more marshland in, whether it's water, related, whether it's conservation, whatever the reason might be, whether it's targeted for, potential, use by trails or recreation, et cetera. And that is part of what they go into here. They don't specify those, although they do mention what was at the time their high priority areas. It seemed like a lot of them were around maintaining, water quality, et cetera. It was for big items. It also mentions a lot of things that actually the town has made a lot of progress on, particularly around recreation and trails and some other things. So I guess I'll just open it up and see if people had things that they read in here or that they had questions about, that we can just make sure we're all in agreement in terms of our understanding.
The question I had when I was listening to some of the information from the spreadsheet on the different pieces of land in town.
Okay, so that's not in this here, but yeah, right,
But I'm just,
referencing that,
I'll go back to this in a second, I don't want to forget this.
No.
Is that to find a lot of things were in the trust,
correct.
and I just want to be able to go back at some point and see if we can see who the trust is, so we know who we're going to eventually if we want to have a conversation.
The trust would be the owner of record, but who are the trustees?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Which are also in, I think as trustees change, they require to update the record, so for some of them, I had actually gone on to the county register of deeds and looked them up, and you can see the trustees.
Yeah, I tried to do that, but it wasn't accessible for us.
Oh, okay, so yeah, we can certainly get that as well.
Do we know from our plan that we currently have, what we have for potential lengths of trail or what percentage of our town has open space that the town right now has, like 10%, 12%?
There is a reference actually in this, it's back from, this is from 2021, so this was probably compiled in 2020, but there is a note in here about open space ownership, including how much of it the town owns, as well as some sizable portions owned by some nonprofits, such as the school or Bristol County Agricultural High School. Let's see if I can find that.
I was able to listen to some of that, just
Yeah.
breakdown.
Section 5 is the inventory.
Inventory, okay, so I'm going to take an acreage breakdown, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's page 42, it has a breakdown of, there's 821 acres of protected and recreational open space, but that's across all ownership, and it has it broken down by purpose there.
So here's another,
And yeah, the next page I think has.
okay, yeah, so,
The town owns 344 acres.
right. So basically, just listing that between the information on this page is, there's 20.6 acres of Arusha Farm located on South Walker Street.
Yeah.
Which are protected via an agreement that was reached back, I believe, in 2019.
Mhm.
So in perpetuity, that is dedicated to farmland. 3 more privately owned open space properties, in addition to what I just mentioned, which are Segregated Country Club, which is a section of which is within Dayton. The 3 privately owned, Dayton, 2 of these are
The original farmland, is that being farmed right now? Or is it just,
It is, yeah.
okay,
But my understanding is that it is. So Dayton has 821 acres of protected and recreational open space, 30%, 243 acres dedicated for water supply, another 202 for agricultural, and 171 for conservation use. Let's see. The town owns 778 acres. Other owners, public, include 193 acres of agricultural land owned by Bristol County High School, 184 acres water supply, 54 acres sweet knolls, and 3.5 acres owned by the Wildlands Trust. So I think that was the inventory of open space currently. Not counting forested areas that are in private ownership. So, or maybe under chapter 16 right now, so. A lot of the goals that are in here are town-wide, so they cross multiple jurisdictions, particularly stormwater, and of course recreation. So reading through this and really picking through the things that they mention in here that are applicable specifically to this committee, it sounds like a lot of what we do needs to be in coordination with other committees. And we really should be working closely with recreation, we should be working closely with even stormwater, if there are parcels that are of issues to the town,
Sure.
And doesn't mean that, there aren't other avenues that we could
Right.
pursue, such as deeper, restrictions on property, such as the erosion farm has,
Mhm.
if the town wanted to enter into that and the parties were interested, or purchase of land. Of course, that would be in conjunction with the land use committee, if you wanna discuss
Right.
that, but, a lot of I didn't find too much in here in the way of a guidelines and, for particularly open space committee, as much as guidance for the town wide, of which we are a part,
right,
which makes sense.
sure.
Are there clear guidelines for open space in Dayton?
Meaning a definition of it, or when you say guidelines?
For the open space committee? Do we have a clear,
Well, we
other
are,
than what we did
yeah,
ourselves, do we have anything from the town?
from the town, from the state, I believe there are,
State, yeah.
conditions for, the creation of open space committee.
Yeah.
Our mission statement, which is to try to focus that and just put it in more succinct language. But I think our goal is, and what was in our mission statement, but it's just that much of it is activities that we don't undertake individually. I think it's activities we're gonna be willing to undertake in conjunction with recreation, conservation, stormwater,
Planning board?
planning board to some extent, perhaps, yeah. Certainly there are, potential zoning things, we're certainly, wanna discuss the upcoming review of the conservation subdivision bylaw, which falls squarely back on the planning board, but we'd
Right.
like to give an input to.
I think an important role for us to play is just to make sure that someone is making sure that someone is working on these goals, right?
Right,
Like being like the open space committee, I don't know who was on the open space committee that helped to put the plan together, but
Kevin
they,
mentioned,
yeah,
as well
so,
as other groups, particularly,
so they guided this plan, but then someone needs to make sure that it's being implemented, that's like kind of what I see, so, and like you're right, like a lot of it involves other committees, but maybe if we're just kind of like organizing, and finding looking out for those opportunities where we can make sure that we're pushing these goals forward. more generally. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it would also make sense then as the beginning of the follow-up to that process for us to invite a member or the chair of each of the other committees that we're identifying to come and sit with us and just have an open discussion about, where do we go from here to support you, kind of thing. What can we do to support you, and what can we do to help keep everything on track and flowing? So that we're not, 6 months down the road, we don't want to suddenly have somebody say, well, what about? Where is? And I think if we're able to let each of the committees know in person, this is where we're at. Have you read the report? Have you looked at this before?
I would agree, yeah.
Where do we want to, we need to have a beginning point if we're expected to help hold others accountable and ask questions.
So just as an example, so this is one of the action items in the committee. Develop a method of prioritization for land acquisition, including our natural green infrastructure, lands that provide critical natural resources such as flood control, water supply protection, recharge, cooling buffers, habitat linkage, etc. The idea that we would try to lead that up into having a method of prioritization actually established for the town makes sense. But as you said, it would mean us bringing on all those committees or having representatives come in and talking with them so that, because these are all things that are under their jurisdiction, but not to say they're all competing responsibilities for them, but how does the town make a fair assessment on any one as it comes up? And particularly, is it, to your point from a couple weeks ago, we should be knowing now what those
Well, I think it makes sense.
specific parcels are, not, something became available to help how we assess it, so.
And I think it makes sense if whether it's parks and rec or stormwater, anyone, I think if anything's proposed for any of this, for example, for trails or for recreational resource or something that has to be brought back to some kind of condition, wildlife condition, it's going to affect other committees' work and what they do. So, the logic, as I said, the logic to me is just to start by at least maybe in January, or if January is too soon, February, give them all a chance to review the report themselves. And maybe send a letter to the other committees if we can identify specifically which ones today. And through the chair, send them a letter telling them we'd like to have an open conversation.
I think in January, we just talked about potentially discussing
Yes.
conservation.
Yeah, that's why I said February.
Yeah. And for February, one, I think we could start with Parks and Rec, because Kevin helped write this initially. So he's very familiar with it in here, he's a former member of this committee. Rather than having them all come in simultaneously, which there also might be some benefit to, but I think maybe if we started with Parks and Rec and you're potentially Dyken Trails at the same time, and get their feedback and some guidance from them about where they're headed down the road and where they would like, us to see if we can assist, because some of that assistance is, as you said, us just keeping an eye on the ball, trying to move things forward. Some of it might be looking at CPC funds, some of them might be looking at grants, which you mentioned in our last meeting, that might be available that we could research, so there's a lot of ways that we could assist in that. Not to mention, after talking with all those people, coming up with the town, how we can prioritize various things, of which multiple, assets are out there that would potentially be valuable for the town, but we can't do them all, so.
Now, I know that, I don't remember who it was right now, it said that, for example, they knew of a piece, somebody recently said they knew of a piece of land that's in a trust right now, that somebody may want to leave to the town, but may want condition on it, certain conditions placed on it. And I think it was up near William Street somewhere. And it was like 25, 30 acres, I think he said 26, but I could be wrong.
You talking about Williams and Maple, Maple, that corner?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
right, he wanted to leave it to the town.
Yes, yeah, and he's a gentleman, I think, right now, I know there's a medical situation involved in it, with the family, one of the family members. But they wanted to leave that to the town, and I think it's important if they want to leave it to the town still. I think then the question becomes, who's gonna meet with them and who's gonna meet with potentially their legal counsel, and what direction the town might wanna go with it, and I think those are the kinds of things we wanna be involved in.
Yeah, and whether we are directly involved in it or just indirectly involved in it, I agree, yeah.
I think it's a few years away, but I know which parcel you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are medical issues involved, but,
But is it too soon to at least have a preliminary conversation?
yes, I'd say so.
Okay, that's-
Because of the medical issues involved.
Yeah.
That, it just wouldn't be right.
Okay, and I would always like to believe that they wanted to put this, at least get this done before the medical situation changed.
Yeah, I haven't heard that,
Yeah.
but it's possible.
So,
I think just gives a little tack.
Yeah. So who at Town Hall is familiar with this besides yourself? Was Mike familiar with it?
I would think so, I know Lenny is.
Okay,
I know Lenny definitely is, I think Mike is a little bit familiar with it.
Okay.
Or at least is aware of it, I'll put it that way.
Because there was talk about putting a fire station there. If they left it to the town. Barely talk, I mean, it was just, why don't we do this type of thing,
yeah,
nothing concrete.
the land is conducive for use as.
Right.
X, Y, Z, so.
Yeah, and we don't know what the families with this original land yet either, for sure.
Right.
I mean, we've heard different things, I've heard they want to keep it as is. And I've heard other things as well, they want to be able to have the town use it for recreational space. So, I don't know if, Dan, it's worth you asking Mike what he knows about that, or?
I'm actually seeing Mike tomorrow, I can ask him what he knows about that. And then maybe based upon that, we can see if, who would be the best resource to, like, since already knows the family, that is friendly with them, that's, in town
Yeah.
government, perhaps they
Well, I
can,
know Lenny knows the family,
whether it's
Right.
Lenny or someone else,
Yeah.
but yeah, okay, good.
so it might be,
This has absolutely nothing to do with what you're discussing specifically, because I don't know any of these details. The other is, are there guidelines for which the town says thanks but no thanks for, or is any open space
Yes.
good open space?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess qualifying good, there certainly is things that we've been asked to be given land,
Like Seneca.
but it comes at a cost to us.
Right.
Not the cost to assume the land, but to maintain the land.
Maintain the, right,
And, for example, there's the dam that some people in town think we should take over it, but then there's hundreds of $1,000s worth of maintenance that's gonna be required over a few years.
Right.
So why would we want to assume that when right now that maintenance is being paid for?
Yes.
So there's parcels like that, they're not all brownfields, but they all seem to come with a catch.
correct, yeah. And even something that's ideal for recreation space, there's a recreational budget.
Right.
I mean, that's true,
Yeah.
unless it's just left wild, and maybe, dug trails, it's ideal for them or something, but other than that, those are the kinds of things that, I think helping develop a prioritization plan for the
Mhm.
town that we could help, work on with other committees would be good. So what are some of those things you look at when you make an assessment, and what are our priority areas as a town, so.
well, that's a whole other side of it, especially going forward, I mean, if, the Trails Committee has their budget and the amount they get, that the town,
I don't think they get
approves
any,
every year.
No, we don't.
Parks and Rec, I don't know if this, you know, we don't even know right now what's gonna be available for next year or the next 5 years to increase any of these budgets, let alone maintain
Right,
more
so
and more
like that
land.
trail space nothing.
Right.
That's why if it was a completely wild space,
Yeah.
but what amenable to trail use,
Mhm.
the town might be more willing to take it on, or if it's like, this would be a great place to build a park. Now you're talking about taking it and investing in it, so that's a slightly different conversation than wild open space.
And these committees are gonna have their own agenda.
You're correct. I was actually surprised, at least in here, it said the town forest is not protected. In other words, it could be developed tomorrow. That was a statement in this
Oh, yeah.
plan, which surprised me, and that's one of the items that was recommended here was that the town do due diligence to make sure that the protected properties they think are protected
Yeah.
actually have the appropriate deed restrictions,
Okay.
because they may be missing, and they actually called out the town forest as one of those.
Yeah.
I don't know what the history is of the town forest per se, as far as when it came to the town, but
I don't know what percentages are canopy, but, I would think that, that it would have been protected. To what extent is it open
yeah,
for
I
development?
think we have to look at,
Do you know who owns it, like,
Town.
what town department, cause that
Town.
matters. Like, if it's just the select board, like, I guess it's not the conservation commission, cause if the
Right.
conservation commission owns it, then it's protected.
but just as a general statement, it's, if the town has property that it owns or the private individuals own that they think is protected.
Yep.
Just do the due diligence,
Sure.
look up the deeds,
I'm
make
glad
sure
you told me
the
that.
right language is in there.
Right,
And that's certainly an activity that we can take on as well.
sure.
Yeah. I was gonna say that, and then, maybe this is the same one, but I flagged the review the deeds of all properties held in conservation, parks and recreation, watershed lands, and
Mhm.
conservation restriction.
Right.
To take corrective action if when necessary, or maybe that's more of like an enforcement thing, maybe it sounds like.
But I think it goes along the same lines, just to
Yeah.
say, like, you'd be surprised how many times the deed doesn't say what you think it says.
Yeah,
The-
like just to take a
The
critical
restriction that you
look at it.
think is in there,
Yeah,
is not, was never registered.
I think that's something that we could
Yeah.
certainly do. And like just bring it to the attention of, I don't know, the select board or the planning board,
Right.
like FYI, if you
Yeah.
wanna do something about this.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
And I think it's important to know regardless because of potential, again, in the future, if there's water issues,
Mm-hmm.
if there's flooding issues, if there's a fire, and it has to be redone and reconstituted at some point or replanted.
Right.
Who's the agency or the department in town that is responsible for,
Well, I think the forestry department has a big say in it, which is run by Tom Ferry. So, I mean, if they were consumed by fire,
or what about flood, or
yeah,
same thing, would that be Tom Ferry too? or-
correct.
Does he know that? I'm not sure, and I don't mean that to be funny.
No, I know, I would assume he does, because he's been the tree warden for years, and, I don't know who runs the forestry department, if it's him or not, but I would assume they know.
So maybe that's another department we consider inviting to the table
Sure.
for conversation.
So back to like to these actions, would it be a good starting place for us maybe to just go by and go through and check off like which ones have been done and which ones haven't been done? And then when we start reaching out to other committees, we can kind of flag which ones are relevant to each committee to discuss with them, of the ones that haven't been completed yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's 34 action items here, some of them are definitely, have already happened since this was built or developed. Some of them are completely under groups altogether. But it doesn't help, I mean, we could certainly take that on as as you said, providing oversight and tracking to make sure that the town really is, it's still appropriate. Finding a way to work towards these, whether it's us or another groups, and seeing how we can help. I think that's a good idea. Develop the North Dayton playground area, with
That's already been done.
already been done.
Yeah.
Great, but it's already been done. So. I didn't want to prolong this meeting if there's not a lot to talk about in terms of meat for discussing this. I just wanted, it was new for a lot of people. We just wanted to
Sure.
bring it up. I don't know if there's other items, other discussion items related to this that, people want to bring up.
I don't know anything.
No. Well, you want to go 1 through 10 tonight?
Oh, the action items?
Yeah.
Okay, some of these I don't know anything about,
Okay.
But like first one, prepare a master plan for Broad Cove. Do not know this, I know that, Dayton Trails is involved.
Right, they are.
but I don't know if that's what's meant here by the
What
master
is that what you
plan.
mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah. Develop a town trail canoe open space guide, both physical and web-based. I don't think, either, maybe the trails or Parks and Rec may be working on something like that.
Right.
Don't know.
I mean, a lot of it goes to the trail committee, and they're heavily involved. Without having somebody here from the trails committee, I don't know.
Okay.
Which would certainly be the benefit to what Jonathan says about asking somebody to attend.
Yeah, agreed. Item 3, improve opportunities for the development of shared youth paths at Horton and Chestnut Street, i.e. Town Forest, including ADA accommodations where feasible. I'm not aware of any
No.
shared youth paths, in
No,
that
there
area
isn't.
that anybody's looked
Yeah, I
at.
don't think so either.
Might be the trails committee too,
For that particular purpose, yeah.
and like the ADA coordinator.
That would be me,
Yeah,
but I don't know anything about it, nobody's brought anything to my
Right.
attention.
So you would know if it was accessible, right?
Yes,
Right.
and I can tell you it's not, not
improve,
yet anyway.
improve town landing off of Pleasant Street. Is that
Improve what?
improve town landing
Landing,
off of Pleasant Street?
I think that's the
that the boat
boat
launch?
landing, boat launch,
which they're working on
and they're
now.
working on that,
Oh.
looking to acquire that little piece of
Right.
real estate right now.
That's happened for several years.
Yeah, and that would be through Parks and Rec, I know Kevin is involved in that,
It's getting closer,
yes.
Conduct a review and comprehensive update of the zoning bylaws. Well, that's a pretty general broad statement.
which they're doing.
Incorporate open space design into any previous conservation subdivision provisions, which is underway.
Yep.
Conduct a comprehensive bylaw review focused on reduced vulnerability and improved resiliency from a particular stormwater committee. So I don't know if the stormwater committee is looking at their own bylaws and recommendations for the town, or,
I actually worked on a project with the stormwater committee a few years ago through work, where we did a bylaw review of the town's zoning, subdivision codes and regulations, the stormwater bylaw, and site plan review. That was focused specifically on like low impact development, so on
Okay.
stormwater management type stuff.
okay,
That was a few years ago, but there's a report from it that like
okay.
recommended what could potentially be done. I don't know how that's
So
moved
things
forward
like
since.
properties along the Taunton River, when you talk about reduced vulnerability and flooding, I don't know if that was part of what was being thought of here, or that.
That type of vulnerability wasn't included in the assessment that I
Okay.
did.
Alright,
Yeah, I don't know. It's been done.
okay.
But is that part of, so I
don't know
assume,
that- I don't know if that's part of what was intended here or not.
yeah, like number 5, the comprehensive update of the zoning bylaw. Is that the planning board that's what
That is
they're
the
doing?
correct, yeah.
And I wonder if that's something that
Although they
they're
pretty
looking
much
at.
listed every committee in town as involved in that, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are related.
Okay. Number 8, Develop a regional project addendum to the municipal vulnerability preparedness hazard mitigation plan. Again, calling out particularly the stormwater committee.
Could you read that one again? Yeah.
Develop a regional projects addendum to the municipal vulnerability preparedness / hazard mitigation plan. And they're calling out in particular stormwater.
I think that would come under to some extent, emergency preparedness.
So I'm not sure what
Yeah.
was,
And
at least back to a
That could
couple
be
years
for
ago.
flood,
was
the
lacking.
flood area, floodplain areas,
Okay,
potentially.
but at least a couple years ago, they saw something lacking in what was existing at the time, so I don't know if there's an update to that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So for the municipal vulnerability preparedness, that's a state program, are you guys familiar with that program?
No.
So it's a state program, the MVP program, they call it. It's specifically like a climate resiliency planning process where towns get grants to do a community engagement process and come up with a plan. So I think this was saying, I think this was actually done. I'm pretty sure Bill Napolitano at Serpent did a regional addendum to that plan with someone, it was like with Somerset and someone else, so I don't know what was in it. But there's also, so MVP, that state program, has a process for updating plans, and Dayton's gonna be eligible for it. I don't know what year your plan, or our plan was, but after 5 years, you can get funding from the state, and it's a non-competitive grant where the state gives you technical assistance to update the plan, and it would
Okay.
facilitate like another community engagement process to look at the priorities that were identified in the original plan and maybe rethink, make sure it's really focused on like equitable community engagement, so making sure all different like representatives from the community were included in that, and to reprioritize the actions. So that would kind of address that one. And that's really like all town departments, like the town would create a core team that would include representatives from different departments in town who would all help to guide that, and then there would be like a community engagement process alongside it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, so I do think that regional projects addendum was done, so I think that one's done.
We're doing great today.
I'll try to find it.
Number 9, incorporate provisions for shared use paths in the development process whenever and wherever environmentally and economically feasible. One, I'm not sure if shared use paths is just a synonym for trails, or this means something special.
That usually means like bike and pedestrian.
Bike and pedestrian, okay.
Yeah, or like road, having like bike and pedestrian, having the road be shared with bikes and
Okay,
pedestrians.
Yeah.
So this calls it out in particular in relationship to development process, so I don't know if this means like making sure that when developments happen, that this is factored in, pedestrian and bikeways
Yeah.
as a factor in the, and are allowed, and are accommodated. And which would mean it's a recommendation for the planning
Yeah.
board that this is something they should look at
Yeah, that's what
when
it
doing,
sounds
when
like.
granting development. Okay. And then finally for number 10, work with neighboring communities to complete the development of the Dayton links to the Taunton River Trail and connections to the South Coast Bikeway, so
I think
definitely work in progress
and
there.
that's an ongoing.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is,
that's the
yes.
progress.
So we can certainly start looking at these.
Sure.
I'll probably pick Kevin Brain in particular because he was, part of the team that put this together, and a lot of this has to do with recreation, and you can see where we stand and what we
Yeah.
might want to help work on.
Mm-hmm. Seems like a lot of this was done with the Trails Committee in mind.
It does, yeah. The only other agenda items was approval of
The minutes.
last month's meeting minutes.
Sure.
I did send out a copy, and I don't know if anybody had any.
No, it was
So
very
the
short.
only comment I have on the minutes, is that, I know we didn't make a motion yet, but, is that in the minutes for those present, I think we also had Mr. Wood's name listed.
I generally, and this is just from being on other groups, I usually list the names of anybody I know that was in attendance as opposed to just them.
The only reason I
Members.
mentioned it is because to me, the way it sounded, and maybe you printed it differently, but the way it sounded, the implication was that he was a member of Open Space.
That was not my intention, but it was just
No, again, it's the way, maybe it's the way I listened to it, but where it's all lumped together.
I can do it either way. I've done that in another meeting. I just list whoever was present, members
Yeah.
and the public,
Right.
assuming it has everybody's names.
Which you're supposed to do.
Okay, you are supposed to do that,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Maybe can you list like
I think I just,
members of the public?
I just,
separately?
okay, I just listed
Just to know
attending.
that, yeah.
Or just
like to know
CPC
who the
members
members
present, or
are.
public
I can do
participation.
that, okay.
Yeah.
So I can revise the meeting minutes and we can review it.
And I don't mean to be a pain, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So I'll include them for next month, we can look at it again and then make an approval if this works. But I can just revise it to show members present, public present.
Yeah.
And our next meeting, if we stick with the first Wednesday of the month, would be January.
That would be January 3rd.
Yeah.
I will say already, if I'm gonna be part of that meeting, I will be having to do it by Zoom, I will be out west,
Okay,
so.
I know it's gonna be the one where we talk about at least the present time, we're gonna lay out and talk about the conservation subdivision.
Yeah, and that's why I'd like to be part of it.
Yeah, as long as you're,
Um,
don't mind being on Zoom.
no, I mean, if I need to be on Zoom, I'll probably be part of the name now, which is great.
What's the
Okay.
Zoom policy for, like, are there regulations on how many people, like, can anyone join, for the committee members? Do a certain number of us have to be present in person
No.
or
No.
anyone can be on Zoom?
The state, during COVID, opened up Zoom for, well, not Zoom specifically, but online meetings specifically for, members to attend and still have your quorum. And
So we could all be on Zoom. if
in
we
theory,
wanted
we
to.
could.
Yeah.
It was thought that they would be at the end of the pandemic, but at least Massachusetts extended it, and they extended it to an indefinite period. I think they just extended it for a certain period of time.
Right.
I think right now it's at least through May,
Through May, okay.
I believe.
And then, but there's a thought that they might just say, it works well, just
Leave it alone.
let it be, this will be, this is, just work remotely, so. So yes, you could certainly, attend any future meetings, via Zoom too, but that's, works for you.
I'd like to also, for that meeting, have another staff member at Serpent attend with me for that presentation. If
Okay.
everyone's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we feel pretty confident that that report will be ready by then?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I won't have like the draft bylaw yet, but I will have a summary of the analysis that we did. We looked at all the bylaws in the region and came up with like a general best practice list. That'll be ready, and some of the recommendations that we called out for what could be changed in the conservation subdivision bylaw will be ready. Because that's what we're discussing with the town next week.
Just, I don't know who's gonna be the person who's responsible for sending it out, or when. But my own comment is gonna be, for me, the earlier the better, since I have to listen to it.
Yeah.
And if there's a lot to listen to, we can.
Yeah, I'll send it out as soon as I can, as soon as I kind of have the okay from the town that we can share it.
So that's
I can
fine.
send it out. Should I just send it to you, Dan?
That's fine,
Send it to
I can
you?
just distribute it, sure.
Okay. Or I mean, I do have all your emails, I could just
Okay.
send it on, yeah.
So, does anybody else have any business to bring up this evening?
No.
Okay, so I have 6:16 as a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll make the motion to
In
adjourn.
a second, all right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Cable.
We're gonna have the meeting at town hall to attend.
Yeah, go to town, why?
No, I gotta go now. I was there all day yesterday, from 8 in the morning until 4:35.